you knew how many times I've recorded this, we are gonna pray, hope and pray everything works this time. It's too hard to piece together everything I've already put. There's too many files, so I'm gonna go a little bit quickly and unceremoniously through what we would have already gone through so far. I don't need these. I thought this would be the perfect time to start looking at not only the books, but also the TV show, because it varies so much. So different. It's so different. It's just so infuriating. And not infuriating in like a it's not good way. Infuriating in a, oh, this is good content kind of way. It's like the whole reason I wanted to cover the books. So if you're interested in those, I will have them linked somewhere in the playlist. I don't have anyone to talk to about it in real life, so I just put that energy towards the phone. Anyways, we are going to get into the video. I already had started watching, and we've had so many issues. The first episode, it comes on. The first thing we see is someone riding a horse really fast on a shore, and then we find out it's Matthew, and then he's like racing right next to a train. And you're like, oh my gosh, is that Anne's train? It's a really dramatic intro. We get the main song. Right there is Marilla talking to Matthew who's about the whole orphan thing, kind of how she's unsure about adopting an orphan.
I pray this isn't foolishness. But it's too late now.
Then when a little boy, she says something to Matthew like, let's go. And like he's really pensive. And she's like, you're the one that wanted this. And they go in to have breakfast. And she's like, you're not even washing your hands. You always wash your hands. This is very weird, Matthew Cuthbert. Don't you be upset. I'm the one that said I didn't want it. You're the one that insisted on it. And so he washes his hands. And she talks about how Mrs. Rachel Lynde will probably stop by because she just loves gossip. She lives for the stuff. And Matthew heads on out and he gets in his buggy. And sure enough, he goes through Lynn's Hollow and passes by Mrs. Rachel Lynde at her window, and she's knitting, and she looks up and she sees him go by like, oh, and we know right away she heads on out to go right over to Marilla to ask her what's going on, and Marilla is expecting this. We then cut and get to meet our Anne. Amy Beth McNulty is Anne for me, and I hope that this makes you want to read the books. Wrong video. It's only a few seasons. She embodies Anne perfectly in the way she delivers her lines. So there is a baby crying on the train, and this is immediately, because we don't have the author's wonderful writing here to tell us instead of show us, is immediately starting to give us Anne's background. And we clip back from the baby's crying, turns into a baby crying, or in her flashback, and she's holding a baby and apologizing really brusquely to Mrs. Hammond, who's yelling at her for being useless and not taking care of kids and blah, blah, blah. Yeah, blah, 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 because it's all abuse. It's all abuse. And Anne is flashed right back in. The show does a really good job of kind of showing that more PTSD feeling of Anne, where she's just like, just something about the way it's written. Sometimes it doesn't come across as strongly, but it really comes across when you're watching the way that they have the flashbacks work. Mrs. Hammond talks to her a little bit, and Anne goes on in her own way, asking if Matthew and Marilla, they were married before, if it was tragic, and she's like, that's none of our business.
Did either of them have a tragical romance?
It's none of our business.
You could tell that she's just kind of like, will you shush and just let us get there?
But I'm bursting with curiosity.
So we are skipped forward until we are outside of the station, and we see Anne sitting there with her little carpet bag. Matthew pulls up, goes on in past her. He kind of sees her waiting there, but he kind of gives a sideways glance. And he's talking to the guy that is doing the tickets. And he says to him, you know, I am looking for a little boy that's supposed to be here. Before he can even say anything, the guy starts talking about how his little girl out there is for him. He said that she could wait inside, but she said there was no scope for imagination. Oh, this is why I want to do it, watching it. Remember the cherry tree that she talked she would love to sleep in? Okay, the show gives us this cherry tree. Let me know what you think. Do you think that tree looks big enough to sleep in? Do you think that tree looks big enough to sleep in? Because to me, I think she'd break through the trees. Anyways, so we get back. She is meeting Matthew.
I suppose you are Matthew Cuthbert of Green Gables. Well, I'm very glad to see you. I was beginning to be afraid that you weren't coming.
And she's shaking his hand immediately and going on and on and on and on and on to him. She's going on about how she must be such a disappointment. Hey guys, just wanted to come in with a voiceover to mention a part that I completely blanked on sharing with you. So on the way from the station over to the cart, Anne and Matthew have a conversation about how she's always wanted to belong to somebody and how she's never been anyone's daughter and she can't wait to be their daughter. And how Matthew and Marilla are the stuff of fiction.
Two hard-working, decent people, lonely all their lives in their silent house, longing for the love of a child.
You know, two people who have longed so long for a child and then get him. They really hammer in with this daughter stuff. And that's not something that ever is mentioned in the books. And I remember loving that factor and then going to the books and being like, oh my gosh, they never say that. It's not like the show added something that wasn't there. I think it was something that just for the times it never would have been said. But you can see the change on Matthew's face and how he's suddenly is kind of looking at her like a daughter, and we can't hear in his mind, and I can only imagine what the script is in his head as well. As they get into the bug, she meets the sorrel mare and she names her Belle. Another voiceover moment time. Anne tells Matthew that the first friend she has made on the island is in fact the cherry tree at the station. She tells him how she thought of maybe sleeping in there had he not come, and she mentions that she thinks the cherry tree looks like a bride, which leads her into talking about how she will never be a bride because she is so homely, except if it's to a foreign missionary. A foreign missionary might not mind her face. She says if she does get married, that she does want puff sleeves, as they are the absolute ideal. She pauses and asks Matthew if she's talking too much, like she does in the book, and he says, no, I don't mind, and she tells us how she can keep herself quiet if she absolutely has to, but it's really hard. She tells Matthew that she thinks they're going to get along together just fine. This is where we get the cut. Yes, this is where we get the cut to Mrs. Rachel Lynde coming up to the door at Green Gables, knocking, and Marilla saying she already has the water on because she's already expected that she would be there. And she's like, oh, when she gets to the door. The actors in this really do such a good job at portraying the characters properly. So Mrs. Rachel comes in, she's trying to have a little bit of pleasantry. Mrs. Rachel's like, I wouldn't want to sit if you're having company. Marilla tells her to sit down, getting the tea ready as Rachel is talking. Marilla finally says that they are adopting an orphan boy to work on the farm and help out Matthew. And immediately Mrs. Rachel is completely concerned about and shares about a story of a well being poisoned a couple towns over, talks about burning down the house.
Set it on purpose, Marilla. And they nearly burnt to a crisp in their beds. Now, if you would have asked for my advice on this matter, which you didn't do, I would have told you for mercy's sake not to think of such a thing.
And Marilla says that Matthew's mind was set to it, and once his mind is set, his mind is set. I'm not even looking at the camera this whole time. But once Matthew's mind is set, his mind is set. There is no convincing him otherwise. We already know, because we've seen Marilla be nervous, that she's nervous about the whole idea. And so we are also watching Matthew and Anne go along their journey. We get to see Anne see the White Way of Delight and name it so, as well as turning Barry's Pond into the Lake of Shining Waters. And of course, beautiful scenery. And we even see the Red Road. So after they name Barry's Pond, Anne goes into telling Matthew a little bit about herself. She'd always worked taking care of children. She worked for the Haymans. They had 8 kids. And then we get into this flashback. And this is how they're showing us, instead of telling us, Mr. Hayman died, because he clutches his chest and he goes down. And she calls for Mrs. Haymond, and she sees geese flying. And so that is how she's brought out of the flashback, by seeing geese flying in real life. And that's what focuses her into reality again. Like I had said, I like how they show that she tries to pull herself out of a flashback by talking about something random that she likes. And she does that here because she starts to talk to Matthew. Doesn't he like geese, and how she loves geese, and how geese mate for life. And you can just see her coming alive again. And it's really exciting to see, after looking at it from this angle, that it is actually portrayed like that in the show. Overheated again and again, and I got tired of it, but I watched the video and I made myself a rough script, so this is okay, because I also wanted to try this way of doing it, and I think this way of doing it might be the happy medium that gets me content done really quick. I need to make some cough drops or something. My throat is dry. But where were we? Looks. Oh no, my iPad! So it's actually talking about geese is what gets her out of the PTSD attack. Matthew says that they're pretty near home at this point. When Anne arrives at Green Gables, the introduction that we get is much more lackluster than what I imagined from the book. But I do watch on 1.5 speed, as fast as it'll let me, so that could, that could be part of it. I think it feels a lot less huge and beautiful, because we don't have the part in the watching the TV show of what's going on in Matthew or Marilla's head at any given time. So we don't get to see how nervous Matthew was about telling Anne that she can't stay. We don't get to see how much relieved he is. He just looks like he's pensive, and we're so focused with the music and the production on what Anne is saying, you don't really ever get to even see Matthew's face to see if he's like, oh God, I can't. That part is not there as much. There's his voice. I noticed that this actor plays Matthew a lot more balanced than I would think Matthew would be, and by that I mean there's no real, well, now. He's a little bit more, hearty spoken, and I get that. Every actor makes their own role, right? So when Anne gets to Green Gables, she is looking absolutely excited, and then we just cut over to Marilla on the porch looking like, what the absolute heck is this? What is this child? She's expecting a boy. Marilla is insisting to know where the heck the boy is that she asked Matthew for, and Matthew is kind of explaining, well, now I don't know if he said well now, but it's in my head, that's what Matthew says.
It's only her.
No boy? But there must have been a boy.
Marilla is asking about that, and it's kind of like really cool because what ends up happening is it all gets like very echoey and like, you know, that sound they make it where it's almost underwater sounding. You zoom in on Anne's face, and Amy Beth McNulty, she's so good with the little micro expressions. You can tell by her face what we learn when we're reading it. She finally is able to say, "You don't want me?" Anne is at this point on the ground, upset, and Marilla tries to get her to stand, completely confused. Matthew says, well, she's come a long way just to be disappointed. Marilla is trying to get the little girl to listen, and it's very out of it still, like we're Anne and not comprehending what's going on around us. We do get to a very iconic moment right here where Marilla asks Anne, "What is your name, girl?" And she's like, "Call me Cordelia." And she's like, "Is Cordelia your name?" And so Anne says, "No, Anne, plain Anne with an E." And so then she's like, "Well, Anne with an E, let's go on inside." That's the part that happens right there. So they go inside, and at this point, Anne asks Matthew why he had her make that beautiful journey and didn't tell her that she wasn't going to be staying. Marilla asks Anne, were there no boys at the asylum? Like, what is the reason that you're here? And Anne says, yeah, there were plenty of boys, but Mrs. Spencer specifically asked for a little girl.
We want a boy to help Matthew with the farm work. A girl would be of no use to us, do you understand?
The show really leans into the whole girls can do anything boys can. Anne says that she absolutely means no disrespect, but she could do all the farm chores a boy could do, just the same. Marilla says that's not the way of things and you know it. Now, in the books, Anne is just like, she'll do whatever it takes. Marilla absolutely dismisses this and then looks at Anne's arm and sees where she's been pinching all day. And I think this is where they make sure to say, like they did in the book, that she's been pinching.
I was pinching myself a lot today to prove that this was all true.
And she just kind of, Marilla gives her this look, absolutely shocked, disbelieving. I don't know. It's very hard to tell exactly what's going through her mind. She just kind of looks shocked at the girl. In the books, we get Marilla's inner thoughts. And on the show, all we get is the hard exterior. You know what I mean? Like the outer shell of Marilla. And that might be partially why, especially at this point, I was like, this might be why I thought Marilla was so harsh, because of the TV show playing of. They get to dinner and Anne is not eating, just like in the books. Anne asks if Marilla could eat. Well, she was in the depths of despair. No, she couldn't even imagine it.
When you try to eat, a big lump comes right up into your throat and you can't swallow anything, not even if it was a chocolate caramel. I had chocolate caramel once 2 years ago and it was simply delicious.
But when Anne is being picked up, like, why are you not eating? Matthew stands up for her and says that she must be tired. And, you know, Marilla says it's time to go to bed. And so she brings her on up to bed. A lot of times while trying to write this out, there's so many moments where I'm like, I think it wasn't the same, but I don't really remember exactly. So I'm going to try to just go with it. I'm not going to be perfect at this. But I want to say that because I don't want anyone sitting here going, actually, kind of a little warning is that, I guess I should have said this at the beginning. Hey, editing me here. Just going to reword this. If you have not read the books or seen the show, I highly recommend you watch the show before watching this video, as my main point is to kind of talk about the show, give the basic overstanding, but really emphasize the parts that are similar or different from the books. But thank you. Bye. Marilla takes Anne with her bag up to the bedroom with a candle as well. And it's kind of funny because we got a little bit of the conversation earlier about like fires and such with Mrs. Rachel Lynde when she was over. But we know from reading the book together, Marilla is afraid of Anne burning down the house. So that little that candle is like a little Easter egg to those of us who know the book. If you've been watching my videos, surprise, you're in on the secrets. Anne is absolutely sobbing as she takes off her clothes and puts on her pajamas and gets right into bed. She's wearing her old disheveled nightgown, and it's so heartbreaking to watch her as she curls on in. Marilla comes back in to retrieve the candle, and Anne gives her a, how can you call this a good night line that we have in the book.
How can you call it a good night when you know this must be the very worst night I've ever had?
Not really sure what to do, Marilla then just kind of leaves with the candle. When Marilla gets downstairs, she sees Matthew smoking his pipe, and she tells him that that's a filthy habit. Another thing that happened in the book. There's going to be a lot of those. We get to the point where the plot is so all over the place that let me live here. Let me live. And we know in the books that when Matthew has his pipe out and he is smoking it, that means he is thinking seriously hard about something, and Marilla knows his mind is made up. And in the books, that's the moment where I said, yep, no, this girl's staying. Marilla can never say no to Matthew, really. And we don't get that to the same degree. Marilla tells Matthew that she knows that he is thinking about keeping that girl. Marilla talks about how they must send her back, and Matthew, of course, gives the same kind of convincing that he did when we were reading the book. I gotta think of a better way to say when we were reading the book. Just like in the book, Matthew says to Marilla that Anne might be some good for her, she might need the company, which Marilla is like, I don't need any company.
You should have heard her talk, coming from the station.
She can talk fast enough, and is nothing in her favor.
I don't mind the conversation.
I don't like children who have so much to say. There's something I don't understand about her.
We don't get to see the inner dialogue here. We don't get to see how much she is really struggling with the situation. She just looks absolutely cold and harsh. And I think that my feelings of that really came from having that in the back of my head and not reading critically to like not have that be my view of Marilla until I was doing this. Matthew even offers to hire a boy, and Marilla, of course, says no, to which Matthew says, as you say, and goes off to bed, leaving Marilla, and camera lingers on her face for a little while in front of that camera, a little while just to show us that she's all alone and pensive. Now it is morning, and we see the sun rising. Anne is talking to the Snow Queen with a lace curtain on her head like she's a bride. And I'm pretty sure I remember this part. I'm going to try not to do that too much, but I'm pretty sure I remember this part. Marilla enters the room completely confused what she is doing and tells Anne to get dressed and come downstairs for breakfast. Anne starts to undress and is definitely in a much more cheery mood. She says that she was hoping that Marilla would come in and ask her to stay. And Marilla tells her to
pack that inside and come downstairs. We'll be driving to see Mrs. Spencer after breakfast.
And that look on Anne's face, as soon as she doesn't get an answer, we can absolutely tell that she was putting everything into that moment, so much anxiety built in. She hurriedly packs all of her stuff, including the blossom branch from the tree outside. She slowly heads down the stairs, and we see pictures that have been embroidered, and it goes down. And then we get to this family portrait. And this family portrait has a little boy and a little girl and a little baby. And I think this is supposed to say that they had like another sibling that died, and maybe that's why they're so close. Because we don't really know much about Marilla and Matthew's past, and I don't know if there's like secret writings that were found, and this is something that is known if you go to other things that we haven't read for the reasons of this whole project and, you know, keeping my minds pure to what we're doing. Anyways, Anne starts looking at the various other trinkets in the room, and Marilla walks in and wants to know if she has stolen anything. And she said she's just memorizing everything in the room, so Marilla asks if she can check her bag just to be safe. She takes the branch with the flowers and also throws that into the fire, which, yikes. Harsh. I don't remember that happening or not. Just harsh. Anne is absolutely famished and talking nonstop, and Marilla tells her to hold her tongue. Matthew shares that morning he had went and hired one of the French boys from town. And now, in the books, this is one of those moments where Marilla just glares over at him and, you know, they continue, and I think Anne stays quiet. But in the show, this is another moment with the Anne stands up, and then she can do everything a boy can do, and she's cleaning up their dishes and quickly putting them into the sink and getting the kettle, and Marilla's like, oh my goodness, be careful. And she's trying to fill the hot water to show that she could do anything and put it into the sink so that she can wash the dishes. And then Marilla starts talking to Matthew at the table how only kin is kin.
Clear now, this very idea was folly. You can't make up a family. Only kin is kin.
That did not happen in the books. That did not come out of Marilla's mouth. But that was, of course, needed to trigger Anne into another flashback. Anne looks down at her teacup, and suddenly it's a teacup in the hands of Mr. Hammond's mother, while she is talking to Mrs. Hammond about them moving in, and they're talking about how no one wants Anne. And it's really hard to watch it in action versus, you know, kind of like how we usually read it, and then we're imagining it. It's a lot to watch this scene in person, and Anne sitting there hearing how she's unwanted.
But we're overcrowded as it is. I don't need another mouth to feed.
I can help you. Haven't I been of help to you?
Anne remarks, though, that they'll never keep her now. And Marilla, unlike book Marilla, is very cold and says we were never going to keep you anyways. Yikes. Matthew makes sure before he leaves to absolutely clarify with Anne that he didn't suggest that because he didn't think she was capable. He suggested that they hire a boy so that she could stay. And she hugs him and is like relieved that Matthew wasn't betraying her. So off they go on their ride, and Anne's deciding to enjoy the ride, and Marilla says that is something that they have in common. We cut to them driving by the seaside, and Anne talking about how she wishes she could be a seagull.
Most carefree of all the birds, don't you think?
She sees a flower, which is a rose, and remarks how she loves the color pink, but she could never wear it because she has red hair, and she asks if Marilla thinks her hair would ever change color. And Marilla says no, that it won't. And of course, she gives her life is a graveyard of buried hopes and dreams line.
Well, there's another hope gone. My life is a perfect graveyard of buried hopes. I read that sentence in a book once, and I say it to comfort myself whenever I'm disappointed in anything. Which
I love, so I'm glad that made the cut. We then cut over, knowing that it's been farther in the trip to Anne asking about Marilla and Matthew's parents and not really getting an answer. Marilla asks for the circumstances of Anne being an orphan, and she starts to give a fake story like in the book, and Marilla says, no, I want the real story. So Anne straightforwardly tells a story about when she was 3 months old, how both of her parents died, and had been working ever since. Anne says she will never have an opportunity to be a child, which, depressing, when all of a sudden a dog comes out barking and it scares the horse, and so the cart goes to the side and Anne just dramatically falls out of the cart. Then she stands up, she goes over to that dog and she tells him to go home, and she points in one direction and the dog's like, oh, and runs away. And what if the dog came from behind them? What if its house is over there? It's just I guess home is that way now. It's just listening. And I think that's what they try to work it in, that Anne is super good with animals, which I think she is, but it's just super funny because she's like, go home. She calms down Belle and tells Marilla that she had named her Belle. Marilla responds that she's surprised at how level-headed Anne is, and Anne says that she's used to ruckus. And Marilla gives her a much approving look. Now they get to Mrs. Spencer's house, and it definitely seems like a way shorter walk. I imagined her kind of being a little ways from the road, and it might be the way it was described, but anyways, we get here. It's this beautiful garden with this beautiful little entry in the gate, and Mrs. Spencer is absolutely surprised to see Anne there. And Anne is monotone like she was before. Marilla explains the miscommunication the same as the book. It literally is line for line, except her daughter doesn't come out and confirm anything. Marilla, just like in the book, asks if they can send Anne back. And Mrs. Spencer says that might not be necessary because there is a neighbor with a very large family who needs some help, and it cuts to a baby crying. And it's a baby in a basket. And it's Mrs. Blewett. I think that's the name. I typoed it in my script. Yes, Mrs. Blewett's baby. Crying, crying, crying. We see behind the baby, there's children jumping around, acting all crazy. And I think the point of that is to show us this is going to be Anne's past, and Marilla is kind of seeing how absolutely insane it's going to be for her. And in the book, she's kind of walking up the lane, and then she's talking to them too, but I think it's much more of impact here, visually, to have them go to her house and see the mess. And Mrs. Spencer then explains to her what Marilla had told her about Anne being kind of up for grabs. They do a really cool thing here where Anne kind of listens to the baby crying and notices that it's actually a colic cry and tells them what they could do to help the baby. And this is a little nod to the future, as we know when Minnie May is sick. At this point, it's just a little added fact to kind of show how capable Anne is. And Mrs. Spencer says, oh yes, Anne has dealt with big families before. And she's like, good, because you gotta work to be here. She looks at Marilla, Mrs. Blewett does, and says that she can absolutely take her off of her hands. And Marilla kind of stutters for a second and looks over into Anne's eyes, and they just have this contact moment. And Marilla says she must consult with Matthew first, which absolutely shocks Anne. She escorts Anne down with a haste, and I think she's get her out of there before Anne says anything because she's so shocked, and she doesn't want to have to sit there and listen to it. Marilla tells Anne to hold her tongue the whole way home, and she does. Anne says that she was afraid that Mrs. Blewett was going to hop on a broomstick and fly away, and that's what makes Marilla say, hush for the ride home. When they get back, Matthew is working on a machine, and Marilla rushes Anne into the house and tells Matthew to get rid of his silly grin. We cut to the conversation that they have in the barn about the possibility of keeping Anne, and how Matthew says that he wouldn't even give a dog he didn't like to that woman. Marilla wants to give her 5 days to convince her whether she should stay or not. And I'm pretty sure in the book, this is where they decide that she could stay, because Matthew has the whole, I won't lead to it, and they just don't tell Anne for a few days. But this is a TV show where we gotta cram the first 10 chapters into the first, 48 hours, not even. There is a lot of focus on whether Anne is worthy to stay or not. That was never something that was really pushed at her by Marilla, and in this one, Marilla is like, oh, you've never had a stable home? Let me just shake it. Let me just shake it. Let me just shake it. We skip over to bedtime, and Marilla is teaching Anne how to fold her clothes neatly on the chair. And Anne says that she knows to do that, but sometimes she forgets because she's so excited to lay down and imagine. And Marilla says that at Green Gables, she must remember to do her prayers. We go into the whole Anne has never prayed before conversation. And she asks Marilla if just this once she can help her write her prayers, if she could help her say them. Anne says that she would do anything to oblige her, and this hits a little bit harder when you know that, Anne is definitely trying to convince Marilla right now. She would do anything to oblige her. She literally is begging, and we kind of know in the books, it's yeah, they're gonna keep her, but you don't know that in the show. Anne describes how the ideal praying would happen in a field, just like in the book, and just like in the book, I agree completely with her.
And I'd look up into the sky, up, up, up into that lovely blue sky without end, and I would just feel a prayer.
The way that Amy Beth McNulty acts in this part especially as well is only Anne put that emotion in properly. Marilla simply says she must thank God for his blessings and that she must ask humbly for what she wants. And we get to see the prayer in action. I'm not sure what fair use really is for these things, but I'm going to insert it.
Gracious Heavenly Father, I thank thee for the white way of delight and the lake of shining waters, and for dear Belle and the lovely Snow Queen. I'm really extremely grateful for them. And that's all the blessings I can think of just now to thank thee for.
I love watching this prayer in action. Amy Beth McNulty makes it so much more dramatic and funny.
And as for things I want, they're so numerous that it would take me a great deal of time to name them all. So I shall only mention the two most important. Please let me stay at Green Gables. Please let me be good looking when I grow up. Yours respectfully, Anne Shirley. There. Did I do it all right?
That'll do for now.
And it's 100% better than my reading of it, let me tell you that. Marilla's face as she starts to realize what this girl is actually saying right now. We know that in the book that Marilla is like freaking out, like, oh my God, what am I going to do with this girl? She's not praying properly, and it's absolutely such a... But in the show, it looks like Marilla's kind of laughing. Like she can't keep it together. She doesn't really know how to respond. And it's another one of those, we're just missing her inner monologue the way we get it. Please let me stay. Please let me be good looking. Did I do it all right? And like I slowed down. I watch it at 1.5 speed, but I slowed down the prayer to pay attention to watch Marilla. And it very much feels like in the book, she's more aghast than she is in the show. Oh my gosh, let me tell you, this show puts so much detail. It's so hard to tell you it as like a summary. So anyways, Marilla goes to go downstairs, and Anne says that she should have said amen, as it would have made it much better anyways. And Marilla says she doesn't think it'll make all that much of a difference and goes downstairs. Marilla goes in to see whether Anne is up and finds that she is not in bed. They kind of look around a bit and wonder where she could be, and they find her getting the eggs and telling them how she already knows the names of all of the chickens. She's got a flower crown on her head and everything. Anne says that she wants to prove that she's worthy of staying, and agrees when Marilla says, just like in the book, that she should have left the flowers in the tree and not taken them away. Anne asks Marilla what she thinks it was like to be a flower, and she said, well, yesterday you were thinking about what it was like to be a seagull. Closing the door, and it cuts over to Anne learning the Lord's Prayer while Marilla is doing laundry. Anne remarks that she absolutely loves how beautiful this prayer is. Marilla remarks that Anne is going to need a new dress, and Anne says she's so excited because she's never had a new dress before. Marilla says that the dress should not take her more than a day or so, and she should run along and learn her prayer. Anne also, too, did mention that she will imagine that it has puff sleeves, and Marilla's like, oh, you and your puff sleeves. Puff sleeves indeed. Anne goes off to learn the prayer, and boom, there is Rachel Lynde at the door. They put so much into the first episode. She said she has brought scones and she needs to sit down to get a breath, and she does immediately. In the books, it's been a few weeks before she's met her, and Anne has really settled in, but here it's only been literally, this is like still technically the first full day, and Marilla remarks that they might yet send Anne back when Anne comes bounding down the stairs. One thing that's more apparent to me this time than it would have been in the past is she has the excitement of learning this new prayer. There's so much anxiety in her body, and she comes downstairs, doesn't expect to see this woman there. And the first thing that she has to say, of course, is an insult.
They didn't pick you for your looks, that's sure and certain. She's terribly skinny and homely, Marilla. All elbows and knees. And did you ever see such freckles? And hair as red as carrots. Dear, dear me.
Yeah, those moving pictures make it more of a stab to the chest.
I hate you.
Anne?
I hate you. I hate you. I hate you.
This is definitely a part where I think if you watch Amy Beth's performance, it reminds me a lot of the way that I said it, so I'm definitely influenced.
How dare you call me skinny and ugly? How dare you call me freckled and redheaded? You are a rude, unfeeling woman. How would you like to have such things said about you?
Look at that chair turn.
How would you like to be told that you're fat and clumsy and that you probably hadn't a spark of imagination in you?
That's right. Sit in your chair, Missy.
And I don't care if I hurt your feelings by saying so. I hope I hurt them, because you have hurt my feelings worse than they have ever been hurt before. And I will never forgive you for this. Never, never!
And look at Marilla's face. Marilla says that she shouldn't have twitted her about her looks, and it's really nice to see, in real person for a change, Marilla acting like she's on Anne's side at all. We get straight from the book line about how Anne will be punished, but Rachel was definitely too harsh on her. We overheated again.
I can see now I'm going to have to be very careful what I say after this.
Marilla tries to semi-backtrack what she had said to Rachel, but it's too late.
Since the fine feelings of orphans brought from goodness knows where have to be considered before anything else.
Now.
Oh, no. I'm not vexed. Don't worry yourself.
So much juicier seeing this part in in video versus just reading it off the page. This is particularly cruel when we hear it from her versus in the books. And we also don't have the side comment about Rachel's children and what their actual opinion probably would be from being whipped. She leaves insulted and Marilla looks equally distraught. Shaky video of her running through a field to a cliff and then just stopping at the edge of the cliff right near the sea. And this is when I definitely noticed that they don't have Green Gables set up in the same way because they were nowhere near the ocean, but this is much more dramatic, isn't it? No fence, no warning. Hey, Anne, don't go that way off the cliff. Just a cliff. Matthew and Marilla are talking about whether or not she will return when they're in the barn. And Anne comes back and says if they do let her stay, she will do her absolute best to never fly into another temper. Marilla says that it's Rachel who she should be apologizing to, not Marilla. And then right after, she fights back in that iconic way.
To call me ugly and redheaded.
You say it yourself often enough.
But there's such a difference between saying a thing yourself and hearing other people say it.
She refuses to apologize, even for Matthew. Marilla insists that Anne must apologize, and she said that she is not sorry for what she said, not sorry at all. She is only sorry that she impacted Marilla and Matthew as such. Full of fire and spirit, this is our Anne for sure. Matthew and Marilla discuss, when Anne is up in her room, whether or not to send her back to the asylum, and Matthew says that Rachel absolutely deserved this. These two are like popped off the paper from how accurate they feel in the book, even though, like I said, Matthew, have I said that yet? Marilla insists that she will stay up there until she apologizes, and again, I have deja vu, because this is how it went there too. Anne doesn't come down for breakfast. We see Marilla and Matthew sitting there alone, and then we get a montage that shows us it's been all day long and she's been up there. The great starvation, but it's not made as big of a deal as it is in text. Matthew goes up with a candle to see how Anne is, and she lets him know that she's able to imagine a bunch, which is helping a little. Matthew tries to convince Anne. Anne says that she is so above this one, like even for him, she would not do it. Matthew says that it's so lonesome downstairs without her, and this doesn't hit like it did in the books when it's been a while when this happens. He can't imagine what it was like without her. Again, hits a little harder when she's been there for weeks. Anne is starting to relent for Matthew's sake, and he says that she'll find the right words. She's very smart. This Matthew very much feels more well-spoken. There's not as many and that's okay. I think his performance is a stronger Matthew, but it's still Matthew. Anne says she can't apologize because that would be telling a lie, and Matthew said it's all in how you word it, and that Anne will definitely come up with something because she's very good with words. Matthew gets Anne to the conclusion that she is very sorry that she has made them upset, so it wouldn't be entirely wrong of her to apologize. And Matthew states that she must not tell Marilla that he was up there because they have an agreement not to raise her. We cut right over to Mrs. Lynde's house during the morning time, sitting on her porch and, of course, knitting away, when Anne comes up very, very determined. And we get Anne's beautiful apology, just like in the book.
Oh, Mrs. Lynde, I am so extremely sorry. I can never express my sorrow, no, not even if I used up a whole dictionary. I behaved terribly to you, and I've disgraced my dear friends, the Cuthberts, who may let me stay at Green Gables even though I'm not a boy.
She really lays it on her.
I am a dreadfully wicked and ungrateful girl, and I deserve to be punished and cast out by respectful society forever.
When she tells Mrs. Lynde that every word of what she has said is true.
It was awful of me to fly into a temper because you told me the truth. And it was the truth. Every word you said was true. My hair is red, and I am freckled and skinny and ugly.
Just the look on Marilla's face. She is like, oh my gosh, I'm in trouble.
Now, what I said to you was true, too, but I shouldn't have said it. Oh, Mrs. Lynde, please say you can forgive me.
She absolutely does not think she's going to be forgiven, but just like in the book, Mrs. Lynde surprises everybody and absolutely apologizes and accepts Anne's apology. She even admits that she was a little bit harsh herself. But she's just an outspoken person and not to mind her, that's what. Mrs. Lind mentions, we knew a girl in school whose hair darkened up to a beautiful auburn, didn't we, Marilla? And she kind of looks at Marilla, and the look she gives Marilla, the look Marilla gives, makes me go, wait a minute, did I miss this whole time? Was Marilla supposed to be the one whose hair changed? Because I don't think we ever really get a description of it besides when it goes like grayer, but Marilla's hair, I did notice myself, was a little bit reddish. So I'm very curious if that's what they meant with that and if it was what the author meant as well. Anne, of course, wants to start going in more, but Marilla pulls her away before she can say another word. The walk back is during the day, so we don't get the whole walk in the moonlight where Anne holds her hand and says that whole thing about praying at night, and I absolutely remember adoring that text. I can't remember exactly right now, but I remember adoring it. We don't get that. And instead, we get going into a ramble about how she can be just as good of as a boy, and she can do outside chores as well as inside chores. I definitely feel like Anne in the books is more concerned with getting her chores done as quick as she can so she can go play. But this Anne is determined this is the only way she can stay because, oh wait, that's right, Book Anne is actually allowed to stay. She knows she's staying by this point. So, you know. She gets there and she sees that they have hired a little boy and she is absolutely offended. In the books, Jerry's presence is hardly looked at. It's not something that upsets Anne. He's just kind of there. He has a little mention here or there, but he doesn't have much voice. Whereas here, Anne goes up and she confronts him, asking how long he will be there, and she doesn't remember him from the orphanage. He lets her know that he's not from the orphanage. He's from in town. He just has a big family, so some of them have to work. And he wants to be friends with her, and she's just completely dismissive. We're not going to really go into what happens here because Anne wasn't like this about boys. He didn't exist really in the book. But Anne is so concerned that she's having like a huff match with him. Matthew tries to reassure Anne and says that, it will be an ease on us to have him helping, and it actually makes it so you're more likely to be able to stay. And that Marilla needs help too, which inspires Anne to run inside and instantly start helping, which we don't get to really see because Mr. Barry comes up and asks Matthew if Marilla and Anne would like to go to tea the next day, as they need to make sure that Anne is good enough for their daughter. Matthew understands and they set tea for the next day. Matthew goes in to tell Marilla and Anne about the tea, and Marilla is all stressed out because she hasn't finished the dress yet. It's only been 2 days. Sorry, 3 now? I think 3, 4? Doesn't matter. Anne is very concerned and wants to know why these Barrys would want to see her, which is when she is told that they have 2 little girls, and Minnie May is definitely not 3. You'll see. She's definitely not 3 in the TV series. Anne is concerned that they want her to help with childcare, but Matthew clarifies that Diana is their daughter and she is about the same age as Anne. This triggers a flashback of the asylum for Anne, where there were these girls. They cornered her and got her down in this room, in the staircase. I'm not sure, but she's in the corner, and they've got this dead mouse, and they're telling her, hey, Princess Cordelia, you wanted to sit there and talk like this mouse. This mouse talked too much, and look what happened to it. And they just put it in her face, and then they give it to her. And so this is a moment to show Anne's tenderness. She holds it and she kind of pets it, and she's crying. And you can tell that she's you poor little sweet mouse, sobbing, apologizing to it. We snap back to the present where Marilla is asking Anne if she's listening, and Anne is very monotone when she snaps back into it and sits down and says that, yes, Miss Cuthbert, don't worry, I'll be quiet as a mouse. And I don't know if that was the exact line she gave in the story, but her saying, I'll be quiet as a mouse, definitely is a PTSD moment. And again, I think this is why I thought Anne in the books is written so blah blah, because it's so in your face here. The brown dress is the one that we see here. The brown dress is the one that Anne gets on, and she says, while it doesn't have puff sleeves, it's nice enough. Marilla pulls out a ribbon from her drawer from her childhood that she ties onto Anne's braids. And it's an absolutely sweet little moment where she's just embracing her. Again, she still hasn't said she could stay. She's doing all these things to a child who she hasn't said could stay. And now here's the thing. When Marilla walked into the room, she opened her jewelry box and I saw the brooch and I was like, are we really doing that this soon? We really doing that this soon? We are, apparently, because Anne sees it and says that it looks beautiful, and she gives her whole line about amethysts look like what she thinks diamonds should look like. Marilla gives the history of it when she's pinning it to herself, and she says that she hopes Diana will like her, to where Marilla remarks that it's not Diana you need to like you, it's Miss Barry, which, like in the books, makes Anne go very silent and kind of shut down a little bit. On the way over, Anne is very pensive, and you can tell she wants to make absolutely the perfect impression. At the door, we have Mrs. Barry standing behind Minnie May and Diana saying hi. Yeah, that's not a 3-year-old. Mrs. Barry invites them in and they have tea, and then we cut to when her and Diana are out in the garden playing. And Diana remarks that Anne hasn't said 2 words yet and wonders if she's really shy. She asks if Anne even liked the cake, and Anne says that it was scrumptious, and Diana goes, there's that 25-cent word again. Anne is really trying to hold herself back and doesn't even know what to say when she asks if she's really always that shy. Diana is the one character that this girl does a good job. It's just not Diana for me. I think Diana for me is a little bit more, I don't know. I just picture Diana in my head and I don't picture this actress, and that's okay, but I just had to say that. So around the mention of imagination is when Anne starts to be able to lose herself and just let herself go. Tell Diana about all the different things she likes to imagine, and Diana admits that she doesn't do much imagining herself. Diana is absolutely mesmerized and wants a story from Anne right away.
Diana, do you think you could like me? Just a little. I already do.
And we get the part where they swear to be friends. Diana, of course, saying, oh, I don't swear.
It's dreadfully wicked to swear.
And Anne saying, not that kind of swear.
This kind isn't wicked at all. It means vowing and promising solemnly. I swear it does. See?
She's like, well, how do we do it? And so then Anne says that you pretend that you're in the moonlight, but since you're not, they take a dandelion, they cross their hands, clips to her being inside the house with Marilla. And she's telling there's actually going to be a picnic at the Lake of Shining Waters, Barry's Pond, held by the Barrys the very next week. Show's almost over. We then cut to when Anne is coming back in from playing, and she goes, and for some reason, she goes and she wants to play with the brooch in Marilla's room, so she puts it on her head and she plays Princess Cordelia, and then she takes it off and she leaves. We actually don't see what she did with it, where she put anything, but she is the last one to have her hands on it. Marilla comes in and demands that Anne tell her where her brooch is, and she says that it should be on her shelf. Marilla says that it's not. Marilla says that it's not, and in a roundabout way pretty much accuses Anne of stealing it. She insists that Anne gave her the brooch and she must give it back right now. Again, Anne still could potentially be kicked out at this point. Okay. 5 minutes left to the episode. 5 minutes left and we still have so much plot. Marilla says she will not live with a thief under her roof. And Anne better tell her the truth because she will not be living with a thief. So it's not you can't go to the picnic where they have ice cream. It's you don't get to stay at Green Gables if you don't tell me the truth. So here, Anne is like, oh my God, I gotta think of something. The other one, she's like, oh, well, she just needs a confession, so we're good. And Anne isn't afraid that she's gonna be kicked out during this. But no, here, the fear is that if you don't tell me the truth right now, I am gonna kick you out. And so, of course, Anne confesses. She tells her that she went to play with it, and she was at an old well, not Barry's Pond, and she was looking down Lake of Shining Waters. It fell into the water, and she heard the splash it made. It's really so much more somber when you look at it, and she doesn't have the guarantee that she'll be staying. Marilla tells her to pack her things, and Anne gets panicked and tells her she made up the story. She just said she had to confess, and Marilla said, why should I believe your words? And, they're not gonna send her back, right? They're not gonna send her back. They're not gonna send her back at first light, as Marilla says, right? What? Wait, what? Anne falls to the floor, grabbing her carpet bag and sobbing. And then we just cut to the next morning where she's on the back of not even Matthew or Marilla's cart. Matthew's sitting there watching her go, so sad. And Marilla has a very cold stone face on her. And Anne is just holding her bag on the back of this cart, just being taken away to the train station. Bye-bye, back to the asylum you go, Anne. I don't mean to laugh. It's just such an escalation. And I think I remember the first time I read the book, I was like, when is the sending her away part? And I was like, oh, they don't, because that's not something they do to her, because that's something for the drama. But when you know Anne, I hope so far as I've shown it, doesn't that hurt for you to know that she had to go through that? We cut to breakfast where Matthew and Marilla are sitting there and no one touches their food. And Matthew gets up and leaves the house. Marilla is looking all sad and alone, staring forward when the flower bud lands from flowers that must have been from when she said that you shouldn't have taken them off the tree, and Anne must have kept those blossoms, and she looks over and sees one fall and feels kind of like, I guess, because we can't hear inside her head. And this Marilla does do some things that are kind of way too far. She goes up to her room and she finds the brooch on her chair, very easy to find. Didn't do a double check before kicking the girl out of the place. And also in the book, remember that she had put it on. She had left it on her shawl. Anne had put it back. In here, they make it that Anne did have it on and it fell, but no, that's not how it was. She screams out Matthew's name, who then we see, okay, so at the beginning, it was not like, oh, Matthew's going and he's going home to get Anne. No, actually a flash forward to right now where we see a little bit more of Matthew going through the marshy, lakey water parts, and then he's racing the train, and Matthew's gonna outrace that train because he had just seen it. So, like, he would know if it passed him. But then I guess he doesn't because he gets there and the train conductor is like, oh, your girl got on all right. And he's like, oh no, I've missed the train. And he looks at the tree with the white flowers and he's like, oh, we have failed her. So then we cut to the train where we see Anne looking so somber, being sent back, being absolutely rejected when she thought she had all the happiness. So you read the book and you're like, oh, they're gonna tear her heart apart. No, that is for the show. And that is one of the things that I don't like about the way they did the show. I don't think there was a necessity. Yes, to get the drama, but like it's good without doing that. But yeah, boom, there, done, boom, end of the episode. So this wasn't as different from the book in terms of what events happened, so much that they cut them up. It's like we've gone through so many chapters right away. It all happens in a few days, and it just feels so rushed. Wondering exactly what parts later on really are even in the books at all. I know that they reference stuff further on, so we'll see. We'll kind of go through and I'll make sure that we're kind of keeping up with what we have done and what we do know, but there might be times where, you know, hoping these are really quick and easy ones to put out for you. I have a feeling they're not going to be. I have a feeling it's going to be easier than that, but not easy. Anyways, leave a comment. Please leave a comment, like the video, subscribe. I never thought I'd be the person begging for those, but it really does make a difference. A like makes a difference. You can comment the most random little things you want to. But okay, thank you so much. It has been a struggle to get this one filmed. A weird struggle, but that's okay. I hope you have a great week, day, whatever it is. I need some sort of little catchphrase. And be true to yourself.